If you're a beginner player or even the most grizzled Valheim veteran, this video will certainly have a tip you have never heard, starting with my 69 beginner tips, followed by 100 things Valheim never told you, 20 things you should start doing, and finally 15 things you should never do in Valheim. Let me know in the comments if you don't learn something new. Let's dive in. In this video, we will cover 69 Valheim tips, but each tip will get progressively less newbie, so make sure you stick around to the end. The number of the tip will be displayed in the bottom right of the screen, so let me know in the comments at which number you first learned something new. Now, it is time for you to find out how much of a Valheim noob you truly are. The way you unlock new recipes in Valheim is by discovering new raw resources. For this reason, get in the habit of picking up all items you see on the ground, like rocks, flint, and wood to get started. The workbench enables you to craft additional weapons and armor. Gather 3 wood and 2 stone to craft a hammer and use the hammer to build a workbench. To interact with a workbench, it needs to be sheltered. Build walls and a roof around it to enclose and keep adding material until the workbench permits you to use it. Workbenches also have an effective range, as you will see when attempting to place your workbench or when building a structure. To build, you will need to have the required materials and be within the radius of the workbench. Unlike most survival games, you can't starve in Valheim. Rather, eating food increases your max health and stamina, increasing your survivability. Build a bed and set your spawn point. Like workbenches, your bed needs to be sheltered before you can set your spawn. Otherwise, if you die, you will spawn at the sacrificial stones where you first flew in. Beds can also be used to sleep when they have a lit fire at their side, permitting you to skip the dangers present at night. Beware of falling trees while gathering lumber in the early game. With low health, a falling tree will easily squash you. Interact with the runestone at the world spawn location. This will highlight the location of the first boss, Eikthyr, on your map. You have 3 food slots you can fill up to maximize your stats. You can't eat duplicates of any one food, so eat 3 distinct foods to maximize your health and stamina. In this case, I have cooked boar meat, raspberries, and mushrooms for my balanced diet. Meat that you gather from boars, deer, and necks need to be cooked before being edible. Build a cooking station atop a campfire and place your raw meat. Pay attention though, as if left too long, the meat will burn into coal. Raspberry bushes can be found around the meadows for raspberries, a fine early game food source. You can't replant these bushes, so you're best to remember their location and return for more berries later as they respawn after 300 minutes. Mark points of interest on your map. The map offers a series of different symbols that can be placed. Additionally, you can type in a name for the labels and cross them off when you're finished with the location. Characters you make are not restricted to specific worlds. Once created, you can jump into any available server with that character, and any item within your inventory will be taken with you. Throughout the meadows, there can be abandoned villages. In these villages, you'll often find chests with resources, berry bushes, or even wood piles you can deconstruct for quick access to wood. The fork icon on food items in your inventory indicate which stat they prioritize. Red for health foods, yellow for stamina-based foods, and white for a combination of the two. You can catch fish without a fishing rod along the coastline if they happen to wash up on shore. Simply interact with them to add them to your inventory. You can repair your damaged weapons and armor at a workbench without spending any resources. Similarly, structures can be repaired with a hammer for free, granted you have a workbench constructed in the vicinity. Weapons and armor can be upgraded at a workbench, assuming you have the required resources and the workbench is at the appropriate level. Some items require higher workbench levels to craft or upgrade them. You can upgrade your workbench to a higher level by building its corresponding enhancements nearby, such as the chopping block. Hostile creatures are more likely to spawn at night, so beware when the sunlight fades. Sources of light repel certain creatures, so building a torch or standing by a lit campfire are good ways to stay safe after sunset. You can even dual wield a torch and a weapon to combat the creatures while also scaring them away. You can toggle friendly fire on or off in your menus. Friendly fire can affect other players in your server, as well as any creatures that you may have tamed. Before crafting many of the shields, you can change the style. The wooden shield, for example, has 4 different style options to choose from. Pick the one that best suits you. When destroying or deconstructing existing structures, they drop their full building cost value of resources. Granted, they were at 100% durability when deconstructed. You will likely encounter beehives in structures across the meadows. Destroy the beehive to get a queen bee. The queen bee will allow you to craft your own friendly beehive, providing you a source of honey. No cliffs are too steep to climb, but you do have limited stamina which will drain quickly while climbing steep slopes. Use rocks along the incline to rest and restore your stamina before continuing your climb. Crafting a hoe enables you to terraform the earth. Flatten or raise earth to your liking. You can also raise earth to make earthen walls to protect you from invading creatures. Every character has a set of skills they can increase, which you can easily look up in your menus. To increase these, you simply need to perform that action. For instance, if you want to improve your jump skill, jump. You can crouch to enter a sneak mode. While sneaking, you can creep up behind creatures undetected and deal bonus backstab damage to unsuspecting creatures. Deer can be killed without a bow by either sneaking up behind them or by throwing your spear at them. The presence of a workbench provides 2 additional benefits in that enemies will not spawn within its radius and any items you drop on the ground will not despawn. Beware of the rain, as any wooden structures you build not concealed by a roof will deteriorate while raining. The color of the structure will change to reflect its loss in durability. You make noise by doing things like jumping and chopping to attract nearby enemies, but the click and clank of mining especially draws them out. While swimming, if you run out of stamina, you will begin to drown, losing a few HP every second until you reach shore. After crafting a bow, you can also craft arrows to launch at your enemies. Arrows lose elevation over distance and go slightly left of where you aim. To fire accurately, aim slightly to the right and above your target. Arrows can be resource intensive in the early game, especially feathers for better arrows. You can press the block button to release a pulled back arrow rather than fire it should you lose sight of your target. The accuracy, damage, and velocity of the shot arrow is increased the longer you hold onto the draw button, but remember, you use stamina to draw back and hold an arrow. You can parry attacks while timing your blocks precisely. When successfully parried, you will hear a sound indicating as such, and the creature will reel backwards. Quickly hitting a parried enemy does bonus damage. Keep in mind, you can also parry projectiles, such as rocks thrown by great dwarfs. If you see an enemy with stars next to their names, expect a tougher fight, as they will have additional health and, if hostile, will do additional damage. They can have 1 or even 2 stars. However, the more stars, the more resources the defeated creature will drop. Deer drop deer trophies. You will need 2 of these to summon the Meadows boss at the Forsaken Altar. Cut down trees in heavily wooded areas so they have a chance on falling on other trees and causing a chain reaction of tumbling trees. This will accelerate your wood gathering. You can even strategically knock down trees to fall on either oak or birch trees. Once a birch or oak tree log is on the ground, push beech tree logs into it to slowly break it down, providing you early fine wood, which is typically not obtainable until you reach the Bronze Age. Turn down the vegetation settings in your menus. This will allow you to more easily see resources on the ground, like these mushrooms. Using your tools like your axe from higher elevation does more damage than at lower elevations. When taking to the seas, don't worry about falling off your boat. If you do happen to fall, your boat will immediately stop moving, allowing you to safely climb back aboard. Across the world, you will come across existing structures. Build a workbench nearby and use a hammer to deconstruct the buildings. This can serve as a nice early method for getting additional resources. As you might know, beehives can be dangerous in the early game. To acquire the queen bee safely, you can deconstruct the structure supporting the hive to destroy from a distance, or simply use a projectile like a bow. To accelerate your cooking, you can place multiple cooking stations over a single campfire. Once you defeat a boss, take the trophy back to your original spawn and place it on their corresponding sacrificial stone. At this point, you can grab and activate their Forsaken power for unique and powerful buffs. Most weapons have a secondary attack by using your middle mouse button to attack, like the ability to throw a spear. However, even with your fists, you can do a secondary attack, which is a kick.
This is Sparta!
Viking graves can sometimes be hard to spot, but they are denoted by a rock formation in the shape reflecting the outline of a ship. Dig in these locations to find a chest with valuables and the chance of finding bone fragments. Bone fragments and potentially valuable gems can also be found inside simple rock formations such as these scattered across the meadows. Every 46 minutes, there is a chance a raid can occur at your location. A red circle will appear on your minimap and a timer will start. To keep the timer running, you must stay within the red circle fighting waves of enemies. The initial event is simple, with only boars and necks to fight off. The types of enemies attacking in these raids will vary as you progress the game, as will the duration in which you need to fight within the red circle. When you die, a tombstone will spawn at the location containing your inventory at time of death. After retrieving your inventory, you will receive the corpse run effect, assisting your retreat from your death location. While this buff is active, you gain minus 70% jump and overall stamina usage. You receive the very resistant status to blunt, slash, and pierce damage. You gain 10 health healing per second, and an increased carrying weight of 150, you can get a massive boost in the rested buff by sitting by a fire for 20 seconds, granted you are not under the wet effect. This buff provides you with 50% increased health regeneration, 100% increased stamina regeneration, and 50% increased XP gain, for a base duration of 8 minutes. Rolling in Valheim gives you iframes. As you learn to master enemies' attacks, you can time your rolls, gaining brief invulnerability to dodge through their attacks. Campfires require ventilation. Without ventilation, they will not be able to maintain a flame, and you can potentially take smoke inhalation damage if allowing smoke to collect in your home. Build a chimney to solve this problem. The difficulty of the creatures you fight scales with the number of players within 200 meters of the enemy. They will have more health and deal 4% additional damage per player within that 200 meter radius. You can apply a stagger effect to enemies by either successfully parrying them or breaking their stagger threshold. An enemy's health and their unique stagger limits are factors in determining when a creature is staggered. You'll get a feel for different creatures' stagger limits as you continue to do battle with them. I should note that you yourself can also be staggered. Having higher health increases your stagger bar, limiting your susceptibility to being staggered. Hitting or being hit while staggered does increased damage. Different enemies can have different damage modifiers, making them weak or strong to elements of damage. For instance, the Greyling is very weak to fire, taking 2 times damage from the fire element. Another unique way to catch deer is using the cooking station method often used by speedrunners. Equip a hammer and select the cooking station crafting recipe. Chase a deer building a station in their path to stop them and give them a smack. Core wood, for the most part, can only be found from pine trees in the Black Forest chopped down with a bronze axe. However, if you find structures like these, you can get core wood early. Build a workbench nearby and deconstruct these structures with a hammer. This wood is a key ingredient in the fine wood bow, as well as an ingredient in the stag breaker hammer. To increase the duration of the rested effect buff, you can build a roof over the fire to gain the sheltered effect and increase the comfort level of the room by building furniture near the fire. The higher the comfort, the longer the duration of the buff. Early furniture like the bed will increase the comfort level. I have a full guide on the rested effect buff, so you're welcome to check that out following this video. When building a structural piece with your hammer, the built piece will be highlighted with a color. Blue being a foundational piece, meaning it is connected to ground with 100% stability. Green meaning it is stable. Yellow meaning less stable. Orange even less stable. And finally red meaning unstable. Any piece built onto a red piece will immediately break. There is a good chance you will come across a circle of massive stones like these. The Valheim development team originally had plans for functionality around these stones, but were never included in the game. That said, they can still serve as a strong location for an early base. These stones are indestructible, and you can build a foundational building piece at their peak, allowing you to build a nice elevated starting base, safe from the creatures that walk the ground. Instead of picking up your tombstones, you can use them as extra storage. You can maintain the tombstone permanently if you never interact with it while having available space in your inventory. There are 3 major physical damage types in Valheim, with each weapon doing one or potentially multiple of them. Slash, like from this axe, and pierce or blunt, like applied by the stag breaker. Some enemies are more or less susceptible to each of them. Inspect your weapon to understand which of these damage types your weapon does. The color of damage you do to an enemy indicates how effective the damage type you are doing is to that creature, like on this Greyling. Gray indicates the creature is resistant to the damage type you are doing, like the poison from my poison arrows. White indicates the creature is neither resistant or weak to that damage, like the slash damage from my axe. And finally, yellow indicates the creature is weak to that type of damage, like the fire from my torch. You will get a feel for an enemy's strengths and weaknesses as you play, or you're welcome to look these up on a wiki. An icon will appear above an enemy's head, indicating their awareness of your presence. This is particularly important when sneaking, demonstrated with this boar. First, no indicator above their head, meaning they are unaware of your presence. Second, a yellow icon, meaning that they are aware of you but unsure of your exact location. And finally, a red exclamation mark, meaning you have been detected and your location is known. If you have found wood and core wood early, you can craft the stag breaker hammer. You can use the attack of this hammer to excavate hidden treasure at Viking graves without breaking the ground. While smashing the ground, you'll see a lot of zeros as the stag breaker can't damage earth. However, it does area of effect damage, so if you do find the right spot, you will see damage numbers pop up like seen on screen. When you finally see numbers, keep slamming away, and eventually you will destroy the chests beneath the surface to get its riches. Let's dive into 100 things Valheim does not tell you. If you are simply sick of our fine feathered chatterbox, you can go to your game settings and disable his hints. With this setting applied, neither Hugin or Munin will visit you for the duration of the playthrough. While in your game settings, I would also advise you turn off camera shake, flashing lights, motion blur, and auto run. With these settings off, your game will perform better and have fewer distractions so you can better focus on combat. We will cover more recommended settings later in the video. Did you know you are a dead Viking summoned by Odin to save the world of Valheim? Odin tasked his fallen Valkyrie to find the most powerful fallen Viking and bring them here to slay the Forsaken bosses. As a result, your goal is to slay the Forsaken and earn your right to enter the afterlife, Valhalla. This game has deep lore, and I will share with you how you can learn more about it a little later. Unlike most survival games, you do not actually need to eat in Valheim. In this game, you will not starve, but be restricted to a max health of 25. Food functions to increase your max health, stamina, healing rate, and iter as you progress to the Mistlands. To increase these stats, you can eat up to 3 different foods at the same time, increasing your max by the values shown in the description of the food in your inventory. As time passes, the food provided by your buff will deteriorate based on the duration of the specific food and will flash when it's close to expiring. The flashing indicates your body can now accept a new food to replace it. The color of the fork on the food in your inventory represents which stat the food prioritizes. Red for health, yellow for stamina, white for a balance, and finally blue for iter. You can use the comma and period keys on your keyboard to zoom in and out on your minimap. You would not believe how many years I played this game and never realized I could do this. The day and night cycle in Valheim are 30 minutes long, with the day lasting 21 minutes and the night lasting 9. Night is declared when the "you feel cold" announcement is made and the cold effect is applied to you. Hostile mobs spawn more frequently at night, but fortunately you can bypass it by sleeping in a bed. While crafting anything at your workbenches, you will see the crafting bar filling up, showing the progress of your craft. If crafting something by accident, quickly click again on the crafting bar to stop the craft. This has saved me countless times when trying to upgrade a piece of gear and not realizing I am in the crafting menu by accident. Speaking of upgrading, all weapons and armor can be upgraded at their corresponding workbench, increasing their stats and durability at the cost of materials. That said, workbenches often need to have their level increased before unlocking new crafting recipes and higher tier upgrades. For instance, the workbench's first 2 upgrades are the tanning rack and chopping block, together bringing the workbench to level 3, unlocking more recipes. The forge and black forge discovered later in the game will work the same way. As mentioned, your weapons and armor have durability that when expired will break, making the item unusable. Fortunately, repairing items is free of cost and can simply be repaired by going to the corresponding workbench and hitting the repair hammer button, repairing each item in your inventory one at a time. Before crafting any of your shields or later the linen cape, make sure you select the style you prefer. Most weapons and armor do not have styles, but shields and specifically the linen cape are the exceptions. To begin mastering combat in Valheim, you need to understand the damage types in the game. First, there is physical damage in Pierce, Blunt, Slash. Second, elemental in Fire, Frost, Poison, Lightning, and Spirit. Each weapon you craft will do one or many of these and can be determined by inspecting the item in your inventory or the crafting menu. To maximize the effectiveness of your weapons, you should familiarize yourself with the strengths and weaknesses of each creature. Most creatures are weak or resistant to one or many of the damage types we discussed. The trolls, for example, are weak to pierce damage, so choosing a weapon like the bow or spear will be more effective against these monsters. Most of Valheim's creatures have a trophy with varying drop rates, with as many as low as 5%. These are excellent collector's items and can be mounted on item stands to help decorate your home. Open your inventory and click the trophy symbol to inspect the trophies you have collected. To get the most out of your weapons, you will need to understand their weapon mechanics. There are various weapon classes with different attack patterns, but most weapons both have a primary and secondary attack. For instance, the spear has a primary lunge and a secondary spear toss. Stick around for more advanced weapon mechanic tips later in the video. When hitting a creature, the damage taken by them will be either gray, white, or yellow. The color of the damage indicates whether the creature is resistant, neutral, or weak to the damage type being dealt to them. The attacks of the larger, stronger creatures can help you gather resources. For instance, troll attacks will damage the environment around them. Their attacks can be used to knock down trees, break rock, or even copper nodes. Other AoE damaging creatures encountered later in the game will also work, like the Seeker Soldier as an example. Most actions in Valheim have a skill associated with them, from running to mining to swinging your weapon. Increase that skill and consequently your proficiency doing them. Leveling up your skills is key to your success as you progress to the more challenging parts of the game. Raid events have a 20% chance to occur every 46 minutes under normal settings. Creatures will spawn continuously during these events for a fixed duration, only ticking down while the player remains in the red circle. The spawned creature in the event are dependent on the bosses and creatures you have killed. Fortunately, events will only trigger when you are near your base, with few exceptions. You will notice throughout the game, you will gain various effects denoted by symbols in the top right of your screen. If you are curious about what these mean, open your crafting menu and select the compendium. Select active effects for a detailed explanation of all the effects that are currently applied to you. Further, you'll be able to review all the tips previously provided to you by Hugin. Each weapon class has a skill associated with it that increases the damage output the more proficient you are. For instance, the yellow numbers shown with the polearm is the range of damage that will be done based on my polearm skill. When in combat, you can block incoming enemy attacks to absorb damage. The damage absorbed is improved by the block armor of your weapon, or better yet, using a shield. There are 3 types of shields with unique properties in the buckler, round, and tower. Bucklers provide the highest parry bonus, while towers cannot parry at all. However, towers have the highest block armor, but do come with the highest movement speed reduction. Round shields are a middle ground between the two. Make sure you select the best for your playstyle. Parrying, as mentioned, occurs when you time a block with an enemy's attack. When parrying successfully, you get a parry bonus, which acts as a multiplier on your block armor, increasing your absorbed damage. This multiplier varies based on the weapon or shield blocking. Further, parried enemies are staggered, and when staggered, take 2 times the damage from your attacks. However, parrying is risky, and if you miss, you may just die. When dying in Valheim, you will leave a tombstone at your death location with a skull and bones, marking your death on your map. Under normal settings, your inventory will be left at your tombstone, but you will lose 5% of your skills level and all the progress towards the next level of your skills as indicated by the orange bars shown in the skills menu. Fortunately, after dying, a 10-minute effect is applied to you called No Skills Drain. While this effect is active, you will not lose skill progress if dying a second time. Further, when interacting with your tombstone, you receive the corpse run effect for 50 seconds to dramatically buff your escape. Arrows require a ton of feathers. The best way to get feathers is by shooting birds with, well, arrows. But you don't want to spend your arrows to craft more arrows, right? Instead, snipe birds with either the secondary attack of your spear, or better yet, the abyssal harpoon. If you are planning a party in Valheim, grab some surtling cores and place them in your fire for some quick fireworks. Valheim has very deep lore that is told through the finding and reading of runestones scattered across its many biomes. Next time you see one of these, take the time to read it and start connecting the dots of the history of this rich world. Do not worry about destroying your builds and relocating them. In Valheim, 100% of the resource costs of built structures are returned to you when deconstructing something. If you ever accidentally trigger the use of your equipped Forsaken Power, you can quickly jump to cancel its activation. For a precise docking of your ship, leap off to immediately stop the ship's forward progress. Similarly, if you accidentally fall off, your ship will immediately stop in place. However, keep in mind, if another player is on the ship, it will not stop. When building, you will see quick snap buttons, allowing you to cycle through snap options when attempting to connect build pieces. These are bound to Q and E for keyboard, but if using a controller, the buttons will be displayed at the bottom of the screen with your hammer out. When placing build pieces, the color of the build piece indicates the structural integrity. A blue piece means the piece is foundational with maximum structural strength. As you build higher, the strength will lessen, with pieces changing from green to yellow, orange, and finally red. Any piece built joining a red piece will immediately break. Certain materials are stronger than others and will allow you to build higher. For instance, wood can be built to a height of 16 meters, core wood 24, and iron poles 50 meters. However, you can use existing structures as a base to build higher, like trees or existing stones. Ancient trees in the swamp and these stone circles in the meadows are a couple of my favorite, as these structures cannot be destroyed. Unlike stone walls, creatures cannot damage terrain. As a result, consider raising earth with your hoe for your base's protective walls. Normally, fine wood from birch trees cannot be obtained until the Black Forest, as they require at least a bronze axe to chop down. However, if you knock a beech tree into a birch tree, the tree can be taken down, at which point continuously push the birch log into other objects until it breaks. Voila! Early fine wood. Valheim is a living world, and as you defeat bosses, progressing the game, different creatures will start spawning in previous biomes at night. As an example, after defeating the Elder, Grey Doors will begin turning up in the meadows. Many of the creatures in Valheim can be tamed and bred for their offspring. Boars, wolves, lox, and the Ashlands Ask Sven can be tamed, while eggs can be hatched for hens. Every creature in Valheim is part of a secret faction. Creatures of the same faction will be friendly, while they will engage in combat against creatures of any other faction. Unfortunately, the one exception are bosses, of which all creature factions are allied. While two tamed animals mate, their offspring will inherit the stars of the parent. If a one-star creature gets pregnant, its offspring will also inherit the star. When a creature is tamed, they join the player faction. The tamed creature can no longer receive damage from the player, and the creature will no longer be aggressive towards you. To butcher your tamed creatures, you will require the butcher's knife, giving them a quick death, or another method I will share with you in a later tip. Tamed creatures going forward will attack all creatures not in the player faction, except those of the same species. For instance, a tame wolf will not attack a wild one. Tame creatures cannot travel through portals, but if careful, can be transported by ship. Rather than sail around a big island, you can dock, destroy your boat with an axe, carry the boat materials to the other side of the island, and rebuild the ship to continue your journey. The higher you dive into water, the further you sink. If you ever drop material at the bottom of shallow water that you cannot reach, build a ladder up and jump from a greater height to reach the ocean floor. Alternatively, you can lay down a workbench and raise the earth underneath the item using your hoe. The item will first disappear, but shortly reappear at the peak of the raised earth. The rested effect is the most powerful buff you can get in the game, which requires only that you be seated under the fire effect like from a campfire. Granted, it's not raining or a creature is not nearby. The fire effect required for resting can be provided from various sources, with each of them having varied effective radiuses ranging from 3 meters from the hot tub all the way to 15 meters from the bonfire. You can increase the length of the rested effect bonus received by increasing the comfort level of the area you are resting. When resting, each of the items built within 10 meters of you will contribute to your comfort level. The current max for comfort is 19, with the 2 seasonal items in the Yule Tree and Maypole providing 26 minutes of the rested buff. Any fire must be vented or it will smoke the room, dealing damage to the player. Windmills process barley to flour faster when the wind is at greater strength, especially during stormy weather. The plains is the windiest of Valheim's biomes, making this biome the most efficient location to build your windmills. I have another incredible weather tip, save for the end, that you surely have not heard before. Stick around for that. You can prevent the spawn of creatures by placing what are called base structures. Placing any of the structures listed will prevent spawn of creatures within a radius equivalent to that seen from the dotted line when placing a workbench. Campfires are the most cost effective and will prevent spawn even if not lit. Items dropped on the ground will despawn after 1 hour. However, those dropped within the radius of any of the base structures will eliminate this time limit and will never despawn. Hostile creatures will attack most base structures on site with 4 exceptions. Campfires, bonfires, and neither brazier will ever be attacked by a hostile creature. The secondary AoE attacks of both Akirs and two-handed axes can be used to harvest flax and barley more quickly. Banners and rugs can be placed around your home to hide doors and trapdoors in your floor. If sailing at sea and your boat is destroyed, everything stored within the ship will not be lost. When returning to the source of the wreck, you will find a floating crate carrying all of the ship's cargo. The metal nails used to craft the ship, however, will have sunk. It's faster to drop a piece of equipment you are wearing than wait for the unequipped animation. There is a secret room under the Queen's infested citadel, making for a sweet spot to establish your Queen portal. Plus, a good chance for a spawn of the rare Dvegur tankard. You can change the color of signs by inputting a code like this shown on screen. Most standard colors will work, but white is my preference, being highly visible even at night. You can use the secondary slamming AoE attack of two-handed hammers like the Stag Breaker to find secret loot underground. First, in the meadows, if slamming the ground of Viking graveyards, you will destroy the chests underneath and the loot will appear on the surface. Similarly, you can find silver veins without the wishbone by slamming the ground in the mountains. Look for the text "too hard" when slamming as an indication to dig for silver. Creatures are attracted to noise. Careful when mining, woodcutting, or even farming, as using your tools will alert creatures in the vicinity of your presence. Two-handed hammers like the Stag Breaker, Iron Sledge, and Demolisher's secondary slamming attack can all be used to do damage through walls. Use these attacks to navigate the burial chambers, sunken crypts, and infested mines, safely hitting enemies behind the safety of barricades. If you have eaten food you no longer want, but can't wait for their effects to expire before eating a new food, you can vomit up the current food if you consume a buke berry, or eat rotten meat recently added to the Ashlands. This will result in a vomiting animation, but empty your belly for more food. Careful though, while vomiting you will be under the feeling sick effect, making you very vulnerable. Clothing purchased from Hildir has a great perk that isn't immediately clear. While wearing 2 pieces, you receive a max reduction in stamina usage of 40%, but only while using the hammer, cultivator, or hoe. Caught fish can be mounted on walls as decorations in your home. They will even occasionally speak to you if nearby. Similarly, the boss trophies typically mounted on the sacrificial stones will also have voice lines if you persist near them. Rather than interacting with a cart to stop using it, which can be a bit clunky, simply roll. The same can be said while pulling the catapult and battering ram added to the Ashlands. While climbing steep cliffs, as you inevitably will do in the mountains or mistlands, bring with you a hoe. When running out of stamina, flatten the earth for a quick divot, allowing you to rest and restore your strength. If you are sick of picking up random resources on the ground, you can disable auto pickup in your game settings. I find this particularly useful in the Ashlands where resources are in abundance. Turn down the vegetation quality in your graphics settings. This will make it easier for you to spot resources on the ground like mushrooms in the meadows or cloudberries in the plains. You can modify your world behavior by selecting one of 6 presets, or customize your game exactly how you would like to play by interacting with one of 5 custom sliders. Combat settings, which varies the player and creature damage as well as creature speed and level up rate. Death penalty will vary the percentage of skill progress lost when dying, and for the hardcore players allows you to permanently destroy your whole inventory upon death. Resource rate allows you to modify the resource drop rate from half the normal rate up to 3 times the rate. Raid settings, which permits you to increase or decrease the interval and chance of raids, and portal settings, which provides various portal behavior from full freedom to no portals at all. You can also remove build costs, make enemies passive, play without a map, change the behavior of raid events, and new since the Ashlands update, enable fire hazards. Fire hazards will allow structures in any biome to catch fire and subsequently spread to other nearby objects. When a creature spawns, it has a chance to increase its level to gain a star or further 2 stars. With each star a creature has, it deals 50% increased damage, has twice as much health, and drops twice as many resources. Most weapons have a 3 attack combo, with the 3rd attack dealing twice as much damage, spears being an exception to this rule. To maximize your damage, time your attacks in a way such that the 3rd attack lands. 3 creatures in Valheim have weak points on their bodies where they take increased damage. Trolls in their heads, seeker soldiers in their butts, and yalls in their underbellies. When dodging in this game, you receive brief invincibility while in the dodge animation. You can use this to your advantage in combat to avoid damage from attacks even if physically they appear to be hitting you. When wearing armor or using weapons that reduce your movement speed, this also impacts the amount of stamina that is consumed while dodge rolling. For minimum stamina usage, use light weapons and armor. Creatures become stronger the more players are within a 100-meter radius of them. For each additional player other than yourself, creatures will have 30% more health and deal 4% more damage. Contrary to popular belief, hitting multiple targets with a single swing does 33% more total damage than hitting a single target based on this formula right here. Of course, you will do reduced damage to any single target, but the total output will be higher regardless of the number of creatures. This is the same when hitting multiple objects, like when mining or chopping trees. However, there are 4 exceptions to this rule. The primary attack of single-handed swords, 2-handed clubs, axes, and the polearm's secondary attack all do their full damage regardless of how many creatures they hit simultaneously. The underbelly of the Elder Spawn makes for an excellent base location for 2 reasons. First, digging underneath it allows for a permanent indestructible roof. Second, his fire never stops burning and does not require fuel, providing an unlimited source of the fire effect. Logging out of the game removes any status effects applied to you. Further, logging out while a Leviathan is undergoing its submerge animation will reset it, allowing you to mine all the chitin. Creatures have an awareness icon above their heads with the yellow symbol indicating they are aware of you and searching for your location, while red means they are hostile with your location known. Hitting a creature that is neither aware nor hostile will give you bonus damage based on the backstab multiplier of your weapon. This varies by class, with daggers having the highest at 6 times. You can enable PvP by opening your crafting menu. This enables you to damage any entity that is part of the player faction, like other players or tamed creatures. This is particularly handy, allowing you to hook tamed creatures with the harpoon and drag them around to relocate them. Fall damage does what is called pure damage and cannot be mitigated with armor. However, fall damage has a maximum damage output of 100 achieved from falling a height of 20 meters or higher. If you have more than 100 health, you could survive a fall from outer space. A new setting was added to the Ashlands update that allows you to change your attack direction. It has two behaviors. One, you attack the direction your Viking is facing, or alternatively, attack the direction your camera is facing. Dvager will attack you if attempting to destroy any of their structures within the radius of their wards, preventing you from building in their huts. Fortunately, there are two ways to destroy them without angering the Dvager. One, build a cart and continuously ram it, destroying the ward. Alternatively, drop a piece or multiple pieces of refined Iter next to the ward. Over time, Iter will shoot out slowly, destroying the device. Bows have a hidden attack noise mechanic that notifies nearby creatures of those hit with an arrow. All bows have a 15-meter radius, alerting all nearby creatures except for the Huntsman bow with a mere 4-meter radius. For this reason, the Huntsman excels with stealth, allowing you to pick off creatures one by one without alerting reinforcements. Most weapons reduce your movement speed, so when looking to escape a fight, sheathing the weapon will often make you escape the quickest. Most weapons have a sheathing animation which will slow you down when looking to escape. The hammer, however, does not. Next time you need a quick escape, rather than unequip your sword, swap to the hammer and sheath it. Most creature spawners are easy to identify and simple to remove, like destroying a body pile in the swamp or Monument of Torment in the Ashlands. One that is less obvious are dragon egg nests in the mountains. These are in fact spawners of drakes, but can be interrupted if you remove the dragon egg. Simply pick it up and drop it to prevent the spawn of future dragon hatchlings. When taking hits or blocking damage in combat, you may notice a bar next to your character. This is your stagger bar. Like when staggering an enemy with a successful parry, you too can be staggered when absorbing too much damage. When this bar fills up, you will be staggered and vulnerable to enemy attack. There is a hack in the swamp allowing you to enter sunken crypts without the swamp key. Simply place a chair at the gate, sit, and stand back up. You can also get inside large rocks in the plains with this method, making for a safe portal location. When interacting with a boss Vegfisher stone, your character will turn to face the direction of the boss location. This is incredibly useful when playing in hardcore where you do not have a map. Weather in Valheim is actually not random. In fact, it is scheduled for each biome for each day for the existence of a server, and all servers will have the exact same weather on the same day. To illustrate, day 1 at 12:40 p.m. in the meadows will be clear for every world you ever play in. There are many ways for you to improve your experience in Valheim, whether that's through a survival tip, optimal resource gathering strategy, or even a simple quality of life hack. In this video, we will review 20 things you should start doing for a better experience playing Valheim. Oh, and of course, I will explain what on earth I'm doing with my stone walls later in this video. Number 1 is make sure you're marking things on your map. Now you might say, hey Spazzy, that's obvious, but bear with me for a moment as I have 4 tips to take your map marking to the next level. First, you have 5 unique icons you can place on your map, so minimize confusion and agree with your server mates which icons will be used for what. For instance, the portal for, well, portals, and the house for your base. Whatever works for you and your friends. Plus, you can even create custom icons by combining the existing ones, like what I have done for the Greater Farm we will create later. With a naming convention agreed upon, add a legend to your map in the top right or wherever you would like. This way, if returning to a server after a long break, you can easily look this up to remember your map naming conventions. Third, cross off your markings once completed. For instance, burial chambers do not replenish their loot, so mark it as complete on your map when finished. Oh, and don't forget to update your exploration at a cartography table. Each of your markings can be recorded at this table, and your mates can update their maps with your discoveries should they choose. Fourth, agree on a naming convention for your portals and update your map accordingly. I find numbers work best. Start at a portal pair of 1 and count your way up. Get your rested buff, get your rested buff, get your rested buff. Have I hammered this point home? Quite simply, the game is more enjoyable on top of the fact that it makes surviving a million times easier thanks to its many benefits. Always have 5 stone and 2 wood on hand for a campfire whenever it expires. Simply place a fire at your feet and take a seat to get your buff back quickly. If no enemies are nearby and not under any debuff, you can quickly get 8 minutes of this buff anywhere. However, you can boost this easily to 10 minutes if you can find shelter, for there's shelter effect such as below a tree, cliff overhang, and especially in the entrances of dungeons such as the Black Forest burial chambers. Finally, as you progress the game, you should always be adding new furniture pieces resources to your home to increase your comfort number and consequent rested buff duration. By building the list of items on screen, you can get a max rested buff of 23 minutes, up to 25 if having the seasonal items in the Yule Tree and Maypole. Plan out and label your chests. With every chest you build, add a sign overhead and label it with the contents of the chest. For instance, you could have dedicated chests for specific materials such as stone, wood, raspberries, whatever you wish. You can also change the color of the labels for increased visibility. Input a color code between two brackets like blue, for instance. Hit enter, then type the label of chest as desired for a blue label. Most basic colors are supported, like yellow and red as shown. Once labeled, there are specific key commands that can be used to manage the transfer of materials more quickly into and out of your chests. Hold shift and click to split a stack by either entering a number or sliding the slider. Hold control and click a stack to transfer it into and out of storage. Or you can use the buttons take all to remove everything from the chest, or place stacks and all your inventory will move to the chest if a stack of the resource already exists within the chest. Build your base on indestructible structures across the world of Valheim, of which two come to mind. First are these rings of stones found in the meadows. These stones are relics of an original idea from the Valheim developers, where they had intended for portals to be built exclusively inside of them. Fortunately, this idea was scrapped, but the stones remain. You will notice that these rocks cannot be damaged by you or creatures. Secondly, when building from their peak, you will notice the build piece is blue, meaning that it is a foundational piece and therefore has the highest possible structural integrity. Building a base from here will allow you, for one, be safe from enemies and raids, as enemies will not be able to destroy the rock supporting the base, and two, will allow you to build higher than is typically permitted. The larger trunk trees in the swamp are also indestructible, making for an excellent treehouse build location, as you'll see when we build our Surtling Core farm. Boss arenas can often be in areas with challenging terrain, with bone masses being the first one that comes to mind. Prior to summoning a boss, you should modify the terrain to make the fight easier. Using your hoe, you can raise or fill any gaps in the arena that you could find yourself caught in throughout the fight. You can take this further and build raised earth columns throughout the arena to be used as cover for the fight. Or, if extra cautious, build a raised earth wall or moat around the whole arena. When reinforcing your base, you should build what are called base structures. Base structures, when built, prevent the spawn of creatures within their radius. While workbenches are the most common and resource-efficient base structure, any of these structures listed here can be used to prevent creatures spawn. Combine these with your reinforced walls for a secure foothold. Build a portal in your base, but do not name it, as two nameless portals will still connect. Leaving a nameless portal in your home can then function as an emergency connecting portal to save you from an otherwise sticky situation. If in danger, drop a workbench and portal quickly. No need to name it, as diving into it will transport you to the nameless portal in the safety of our home. You should build farms for important resources like Surtling Cores and Great Orf Eyes. First, Surtling Core farms require a geyser in the swamp. Surtlings perish when touching water. For this reason, simply pull out your pickaxe and level the earth around the geyser. While the flame will remain, any future spawning Surtlings will die instantly, giving you coal and Surtling Cores. That said, these will only spawn if a player is present. Set up a quick treehouse nearby and AFK. Over time, Surtlings will spawn and die, giving you unlimited access to their cores and coal. Great Orf farms are a little bit more involved, but like the Surtlings, require a spawner in a Great Orf nest found in the Black Forest. To prevent their spawning, first build a roof over the nest, then excavate underneath the spawner, at which point place 5 standing braziers on the ground below and raise and flatten the earth around them until the flames of the braziers are barely visible. Build up stone around them, leaving a pit with only the braziers. At this point, destroy the roof, letting the Great Orf spawn into the pit. Like the Surtling farm, sit back, relax, and watch the creatures spawn and perish for Great Orf Eyes and much more. Inverting the basic stairs has a surprising property that makes for excellent defense structures. As you can see, when surrounding yourself with inverted stairs, enemy AI has no idea how to get to your location, nor will they know how to attack the inverted stair as they would with a typical wall. However, if you do get too close, they will attempt to swing at you, damaging the stair. To enhance your sturdy walls, you can place inverted stairs at the base, as made popular by the B-Sides video in the top right. You must check this video out. This will confuse the enemy AI, making your base impenetrable. Furthermore, you can place stone stairs over top to improve the look and prevent rain damage to the stair. Lastly, spikes can be placed at the wall base to damage enemies brave enough to attack. Isolate structures from the supporting earth to pop them. This concept was made popular through the popping of massive copper veins, as you have likely seen across YouTube. In my opinion though, you're better off grabbing the visible copper and moving on to the next vein. That said, this strategy works well for other resource nodes, such as silver in the mountains and giant rocks in the plains. As demonstrated with this rock, excavate its supporting structure, ensuring none of its foundation touches earth, and give it one last smack, popping the entire node. node. Use this strategy to maximize your resource gathering efficiency. Mix and match your armor for outstanding combinations. Many armor pieces carry unique attributes such as the root harness providing pierce resistance, root mask poison, and the fender's armor giving movement speed. That said, max armor should also be a priority for the highest armor provider in the Carapace set. For best results, I suggest combining the Carapace helmet, root harness chest piece, and fender's leggings as a combination to try. You must carry multiple weapons to counter creatures' strengths and take advantage of their weaknesses. For instance, skeletons to blunt and trolls to pierce. I recommend having a polearm, mace or hammer, and sword to cover the 3 types of physical damage in pierce, blunt, and slash, but combine that with your favorite bow and elemental damaging arrows to ensure you have all the damage types covered. A well-known but great tip is to use trolls to excavate resources for you. This works primarily for both copper and stone deposits as well as trees in the Black Forest. Simply get their aggression and bait their attacks towards the resource of interest. Dodge their attacks as they break their surrounding resource nodes, providing you easy loot. Wear clothing purchased from Hildir when using the hammer, hoe, or cultivator. Following the completion of Hildir's requests, purchase her clothing for 35% reduced stamina consumption. Unfortunately, the stamina reduction benefit is only provided when using these 3 tools. Destroy structures encountered in the wild for valuable and sometimes progression-breaking resources. Starting in the meadows, you can build a workbench nearby wooden shelters and corewood camps to obtain fast wood, destroy beasts safely, and get corewood before the Black Forest. Shipwrecks can be found in the Black Forest, swamp, and plains for a sweet haul of fine wood. Stone structures in the Black Forest, plains, and mistlands can be torn down with a stone cutter and hammer or excavated and popped like resource veins. Other materials can also be captured by destroying doors, lights, banners, you name it, in each of the swamp's sunken crypts, mountains' frost caves, and mistlands' infested mines. While I have not listed everything that can be destroyed for resources, always ask yourself the question when encountering structures in the wild, can I break this? Speaking of dungeons, some structures can be built without a workbench and therefore can be built in dungeons to assist in overcoming its inhabitants safely. Placing structures like the cooking station, wood piles, or campfires can all be used to impede progress of your enemies at choke points. Simply block their progress and take them out at a distance. Take advantage of the immunity given by your dodge roll. Like Souls-like games, dodging in this game gives you what are called iframes. Iframes provide you complete invincibility while in the animation. If you time your dodges precisely, you can take 0 damage from any incoming enemy attack. I prefer to roll into my enemies to get close to them, allowing for an easy counterattack when coming out of my dodge. You should always sleep through the night. And again, you might say, Spazzy, it's so obvious. But hear me out. There are 5 major reasons why sleeping through the night is an absolute must for any playthrough. Number 1, if staying outside at night, you get the cold debuff, reducing your health and stamina regeneration. 2, sleeping through the night gives you back your rested buff, and we know how important that is from earlier. Number 3, more dangerous versions of enemies spawn, and they become more aggressive, leading to increased danger. Number 4, certain creatures and starved versions of other creatures exclusively spawn at night and need to be avoided, like the Fenring in the mountains as an example. Plus, starved versions of wolves and Yalls only spawn at night. Surely we want to avoid these. And number 5, material processing such as at a smelter, kiln, blast furnace, and fermenter all continue progressing while you sleep, saving you a ton of time. Not to mention, your crops will continue to grow through the night. To have a better time with your friends in Valheim, you should bind your emotes to keys by hitting F5, typing bind, the desired key, and then the name of the emote, giving you quicker access to sick emotes like Headbang in this example. And speaking of playing with friends, check out my link in the description for 30% off your first month of server hosting with that host. Unbind the emote, hit F5, type unbind, and then the key you no longer want to be bound. Always sheath your weapon when out of combat. Most weapons, except for daggers and fist weapons, reduce your speed when held. To sheath, either select the weapon you are wielding in your hotbar or press R. Unfortunately, sheathing has an animation that takes you out of your sprint. To counter this, when sprinting, double-click the hammer in your hotbar. Hammers have no sheath animation and therefore allow you to unequip your weapon the fastest. There are many bad habits you have likely developed in your time playing Valheim that could be worsening your experience. Today, we will count down 15 of those things you should stop doing when playing Valheim to improve your next playthrough. Oh, and of course, stick around to find out why you should stop leaving stumps from fallen trees later in this video. Stop trying to stack damage resistance. Damage resistance is an asset in your pursuit of survival in Valheim and is provided to you from status effects, armor, forsaken powers, as well as meads. Based on the magnitude of resistance you have, you could be subject to vastly different ranges of damage, from double normal damage to a mere fraction, as low as 25%. However, what is lesser known is how these sources of resistance interact when combined. In short, resistances do not stack, and the resistance awarded to you is provided based on a hierarchy of the resistances, with very resistant at the top and weak at the bottom. To illustrate, let's consider two examples. First, let's say you're wearing the now very weak to fire feather cape in the Mistlands and you stumble into a Yawl. The Yawl is going to do twice the normal damage to you. However, let's take the same situation, but this time you have a barley wine active, which provides a very resistant status to fire. In this case, we have a conflict with very resistant from the wine and very weak from the cape. Rather than canceling each other out as you would expect if resistance is stacked, very resistant takes priority, resulting in you having 75% reduced damage from fire. Second, let's say you want to maximize your poison resistance going into the swamp and equip your resistant root mask and pop a very resistant poison mead. Rather than combining the 50% reduced damage from the mask and the 75% reduced by the potion to grant immunity, the higher resistance takes priority, giving you only the 75% reduced poison damage from the mead. It's worth noting, however, in this situation, that armor also does contribute to damage reduction, so the 8 armor from the root mask will help reduce more of the poison damage than from the mead alone. The Valheim wiki shares many more of these resistance interactions to further explain this mechanic, of which you will now see on screen if you are curious. Stop sprinting everywhere. It can be very tempting to sprint across Valheim's massive world, but one thing you will learn quickly in this game is that stamina is your most valuable resource. Without it, you cannot dodge, block, or even swing your weapon. Rather than sprinting blindly into your next biome, walk there instead. The last thing you want to do is sprint into unknown territory, only to be swarmed immediately, having burnt all your stamina to get there. Further, when in combat, learn to bait your enemies' attacks and simply step away from them as they prepare to attack. Rather than sprinting or dodging, while walking and baiting attacks, you have extra time to let your stamina bar refill. And of course, always get your rested bonus before setting off on an adventure to increase your stamina regain and ensure you eat stamina-rich foods and have stamina meads at your disposal. Stop holding down the interact button when placing resources into a refining station, such as your kiln, furnace, or later windmills and item refineries. In fact, it's faster if you spam click the interact button rather than hold it down. Try this out next time to save yourself a few seconds when refining resources. Stop sleeping on the best defensive tool the game has to offer. No, it's not a shield, not an overpowered piece of armor, but rather the almighty hoe. Unlike constructed walls, Earth in Valheim cannot be damaged or destroyed, except from, well, exploding lava blobs in the Ashlands, but we don't talk about that place. For ultimate safety, raise the earth around your base to be invulnerable to raids. All you need is a nearby workbench and some stone. You can even take this further and use it to get quick elevation advantage on your foes. Point directly down and raise the earth below your feet. From there, whip out your bow and dominate the creatures from the safety of your mound. Next, stop hunting deer from upwind. There is a common misconception in Valheim that deer have a sense of smell and can more easily detect you if you are downwind of them. This is false. Deer, like all other creatures, can only detect the player either via their line of sight or by making noise near them. To approach a deer discreetly, use your sneak skill to reduce your noise and approach from behind to stay out of their line of sight. Stop leaving your ships unprotected on the shore. Nearby creatures will not hesitate to attack your boat if coming across it on the coast. If destroyed, the materials could be lost to the bottom of the ocean. However, I do have a solution. While you cannot deconstruct your ships with a hammer, you can destroy them and reclaim the resources. To destroy your ship, make sure you stand near the middle of the mast and hack away with your weapon. Eventually, the ship will break. If standing at the mast, you should recapture the resources used to craft the ship, assuming you have the inventory space. Take the boat materials and place them in the safety of a chest nearby, rather than leave your ship exposed. When ready to sail, reclaim the materials, craft the boat, and be on your way. Stop breeding creatures without stars. As you likely know, wolves, boars, and asphen all have single and 2-star versions. The starred creatures, when butchered, will drop far more resources and make for a more efficient farming source. Plus, in the case of the wolves and asphen, make for significantly more potent fighting companions. In addition, creatures with stars, when producing offspring, will pass on their stars to their children, giving you an unlimited source of the starred allies. Stop enraging the friendly Devagar. If you have progressed to the Mistlands and now the Ashlands, you will likely have encountered the Valheim's universe's version of dwarves in the Devagar. While these are initially friendly, they will quickly turn on you if you attack them or their structures. However, the Dvagr structures in both the Mist and Ash serve as excellent locations to build a foothold of safety. Fortunately, I have two strategies that will allow us to build inside these structures without disturbing the native Dvagr. First, construct a cart and push it repeatedly into the ward. Eventually, the ward will break. Alternatively, toss a handful of refined Eider next to the ward, and over time, the Eider projectiles will hit and damage the ward, eventually destroying it. With the ward destroyed, you are free to build these structures without angering the Dvagr. Stop neglecting the sneak mechanic in combat. Sneaking in Valheim is a fantastic way to get a surprise attack on your enemies with a backstab bonus. The backstab bonus is a damage multiplier based on your weapon's type. The bonus varies from no additional damage with the Abyssal Harpoon, 3 times damage with most other weapon types, but daggers in particular stand out, providing 6 times base damage. However, keep in mind, to get the backstab bonus, the enemy must not have the red exclamation mark above their head, otherwise they will be immune to backstab. Further, counter to the name of the damage bonus, you do not need to hit the creature in the back. As long as the creature does not have the red exclamation mark above their head, a hit from any direction grant the bonus. Stop leaving your base without the rested buff. If you have not learned this already, this tip will make your experience in Valheim much more enjoyable. In Valheim, stamina is your most valuable resource, but is limited and often takes a long time to regenerate. The rested buff is the counter to this. Simply sit at a fire for 20 seconds, or better yet, in a shelter to receive the buff denoted by a red symbol and timer at the top right corner of your screen. This buff will give you increased health, stamina, and Eider regeneration, and even a hidden benefit of increased XP gain. Further, you can increase the duration of this buff by increasing the comfort of your resting area by building eligible furniture. Having this buff active as much as possible will surely increase your survivability, and most importantly, enjoyment playing this game. Stop leaving your tame creatures in exposed areas, especially chickens. While you might think your farm animals will be safe within the walls of your base, the existence of raids flips that on its head. As you progress past the defeat of Bone Mass, you will unlock the You Stir the Cauldron event, which will bring bats down upon you. Unlike land-based creatures, bats will fly right over your walls and target you and your livestock. Bats for the player are mostly pests, but with chickens low health, they won't stand a chance. Instead, build your chicken farms inside with enclosed roofs to keep them safe. Stop crushing the performance of your game and causing lag. Have you ever noticed the larger you build your base, the more starting your game gets? You are likely getting frame dips, or more simply, your computer or console is starting to struggle to render all the build pieces you have placed. Before getting to my 6 ways to improve your performance, let's explain what causes performance dips in Valheim. In short, lag is caused by the amount of instances, or more plainly, objects in your vicinity. To check the number of instances near you, press the F2 key. To complicate things further, instances take many forms and are not all created equal. To simplify things, I like to break them into 3 categories. 1. Objects or build pieces. 2. Light sources. And 3. Creatures, both hostile and tame. Build pieces contribute the least number of instances, with creatures contributing the most. As you likely expected, the place with the most instances is going to be at your base, and therefore, the first tip for improving game performance is to choose your base location carefully. For example, some biomes are more dense than others, with the Black Forest having the most objects and therefore being the worst biome to build your base compared to the plains, with fewer objects and more open space. Second, a common misconception in Valheim is that terraforming decreases game performance, which is simply not true. Rather, it would be wise to reduce the number of build pieces by forming natural barriers for your builds with the existing terrain. Third, reduce the number of light sources in your home. As mentioned previously, light contributes more instances than a standard build piece. Fourth, do not build your tame creature farms in your main base. Creatures contribute the most instances, and therefore you should raise your livestock far away from your home. Further, it's generally wise to leave space between yours and server mates' builds, wherever possible, to reduce the density of objects in any single area. Fifth, pick up all dropped items around your home. Personally, the later into the game I get, the more guilty I am of leaving random loot on the ground. Every object, remember, contributes an instance, so pick these up to get that number down. Or, if dev commands are an option for you in your solo world, input the command remove drops to get rid of all loose items. And 6, of which I am extremely guilty of, is leaving stumps after cutting down trees. Stumps themselves are instances, plus they just look ugly. You can take this a step further by breaking any bushes, logs, and rocks in the area as well. Every little bit counts. Stop dying to fall damage. Fall damage is a threat in Valheim, especially in biomes with large elevation changes like the mountains and mistlands. Fortunately, you can save yourself from these embarrassing deaths by understanding fall damage behavior. First, fall damage taken when falling is of the pure type, which in Valheim means it cannot be reduced by wearing armor. Further, damage increases the higher you fall, starting at any height above 4 meters, yielding 6.25 damage from 5 and increasing 6.25 with each additional meter. Fortunately, the damage reaches a cap of 100 when falling from 20 meters or higher. With fall damage capped, if you keep your health at 100 or higher, you will never be killed by fall damage no matter the height. Alternatively, after progressing to the Mistlands, always wear the Feather Cape. This item removes fall damage altogether, plus it has incredible perks and looks awesome. Stop waiting to level your bow skill. The bow skill is very likely the best in the entire game, and if you aren't starting to level it as soon as the meadows, you should be. Like melee weapons, which get increased damage and reduced stamina when leveled, the bow skill, in addition to both those, also reduces the draw time to release an arrow. As a result, the damage per second dealt skyrockets the higher your skills with bows. The sad part is that to achieve level 100, you need over 20,000 experience and only get 1.5 for every hit on a creature. One thing you can do to increase your experience gain with bows is to wear the root armor, which provides a set bonus, adding 15 to your bow skill. This will reduce your draw time quite a bit and allow you to get more frequent hits and level your skill faster. Stop playing on seeds you hate. Valheim is a procedurally generated game, and that means that no world is exactly like any other. Some are easier than others, some are harder, and each is unique in their own way. Rather than leaving up to chance, you can look up a specific seed and start your servers in a world exactly how you want it. If you want a world with a large starter island, check out this seed. Want to speedrun? How about this? Looking for a tiny starter island for a challenge? This might be the seed for you. And of course, you can always use the Valheim map tool to inspect your random seed before playing to ensure it is a seed that meets all your expectations.